Hello everyone, welcome to the lecture number 59 of this NPTEL lecture series on charging infrastructure, and today we will continue our discussions on charging stations which we have started in the last class. So we have seen that what is a charging station. So charging station is nothing but a station which comprises of several electric vehicle supply equipments. Now those electric vehicle supply equipment could be an AC EVSE or could be a DC EVSE, and in that EVSE we have a charging gun which is used to charge the vehicle. So generally the EVSEs are designed with a single charging gun or dual charging gun. Now charging station also include a central management system called as a CMS, sometimes also called as a charging station management system, CSMS. Now in the central management system, which is the central management system is nothing but, you can say that it is a kind of a server which actually maintains, or you can say manages the entire charging station. So in the charging station we have several EVSEs which are there. It could be several, I am drawing two, it could be several EVSEs which are there, and they are communicating with this central management system for various purposes, for data logging, for metering, for maintaining, for understanding the status of EVSEs, understanding the user behavior, different aspect it can be done. Now this communication between EVSE and central management system is happening using the OCPP protocol, which is Open Charge Point Protocol. It is a very standardized protocol which actually ensures the interoperability between different EVSEs and central management system. And then, because when we see our EV, between EV and EVSE we have one protocol which we have discussed for AC charging system, for DC charging system, some of the protocols we have discussed which ensure what kind of messages, how the messages are need to be sent, how the data need to be scheduled, how it should be sent, all those things, different stages of charging we have seen. But whenever the communication which takes place between EVSE and CMS, it will be defined by the OCPP protocol, which is the Open Charge Point Protocol. Now in this particular entire system, the OCPP is used to actually stabilize the communication or to do the data exchange between EVSE and CMS, and it actually ensures the interoperability, because EVSE could be manufactured by different charger manufacturer, CMS central management system could be purchased from different developers, or you can say sometimes the charging station operator itself have its own central management system. Sometimes the manufacturer which are manufacturing EVSEs will provide their own CMS, or you can central management system. So it actually helps the charging station operator to do the interoperability. That means tomorrow if he wants to purchase EVSE from different manufacturer, he can purchase, and he can easily ensure that the EVSE which he is purchasing has the OCPP protocol inbuilt into it, so that it can easily do communication with the central management system. So it provides the interoperability, it also provides the scalability, because in future if new additional EVSEs are being added into a charging station, one can easily keep on adding. Then it defines the data standardization. So how the data need to be exchanged, what is the format of data, all those things are defined in OCPP protocol. So that's when the data standardization is been done, that's when it can be easily be implementable or manageable. Then it is simple implementation, or you can say the lead time to scale or lead time to develop the charging station will go down. So they will also facilitate the simple implementation. So these are some of the reasons why the OCPP protocol got adopted across different countries. Although it started from Netherlands, but then slowly the distribution companies realizes, the charging station operator realizes that they need a standard which will define the communication between the EVSE and CMS, central management system. Now this protocol which is there, which actually has different components, they are OCPP profiles. Now these profiles are the things which defines what kind of messages which are being exchanged. For example, there is core OCPP profile to configure the OCPP in the CMS as well as EVSE. Also there are some additional security profiles which are present, which will use to enhance the security features of the communication. So different OCP profiles are there, one need to understand what are those different OCP profiles are there. Then in each OCP profile you have data types which defines the kind of data which are exchanged between the EVSE and the central management system, what are the data types which are included. Then you have messages, what all different messages which are been there between the central management system and the EVSEs, and then you have a configuration keys. So, configuration keys, what you can say, special kind of message which are used to configure the communication, or you can say that which is used to configure some of the settings in the EVSEs and the central management system. Then you have use cases where predefined or specific profiles are being designed so that they can easily use those use cases and build the communication over that. For example, start transaction and stop transactions are some of the use cases which are being defined in different stages of communication between the CMS and the EVSE. Then you have test cases. These are being used by the developer to basically ensure whether the OCPP is implemented properly or not. Before sending it to the compliance certification, one can easily test whether the CMS and the EVSEs are actually compliant to that OCPP or not. So, one can use those test cases directly, they can import those test cases and they can test their implementation whether it is being properly implemented or not. Now, in OCPP, if you look very carefully, we have also discussed this origination. So, it started in 2009 and till then it has gone up to OCPP 2.0.1 version. Now, they have also come up with the OCPP 2.1 version as well. And in each versions, the number of messages, the number of data types, the number of configuration keys, the use cases are being added. That means additional features will keep on added in each version of this OCPP. So, whenever if I say that my central management system or EVSE is compliant to OCPP 1.6, then one must ensure that they have the 60 use cases, it has the 28x2 messages, around 56 messages whenever there is a communication between the central management system and the EVSE. So, it is a server and client kind of communication. So, one is the request message, another one with the confirmation message. So, that is why it is written 28x2 messages, and there are 49 data types, 43 configuration keys. All those things will be defined in OCPP 1.6, and this OCPP is now managed by OpenCharge Alliance, and it is an open source thing. One can easily go to the OCA website, OpenCharge Alliance website, and download the required files and then implement those OCPP 1.6 configurations or those messages, and then one can say that their CMS and EVSE are OCPP compliant for whatever the version you are referring to, and implementing that you can say it is OCPP that particular version compliant. Now, let us discuss the OCPP implementation. There are two types of implementation for OCPP which is being defined in the OCPP document. They are OCPP SOAP implementation and OCPP JSON implementation. Now, SOAP implementation is primarily used for OCPP 1.6 and earlier versions, and it is basically the simple object access protocol, which is nothing but a messaging protocol for data exchange, which defines the data structure and how the messages are being shared. Basically, it is the architecture using which messages are sent. It utilizes XML to structure the messages. Here XML means extensible markup language. Now, this XML format of data representation is a heavy duty, primarily due to the addition of protocol headers, which is due to the implementation of SOAP protocols. Now, because of that, the size of the data becomes large, and thus makes the SOAP implementation less efficient and slower. Further, it relies on the more complex request response model that requires both the charge point and the CMS to act as server to facilitate the two-way communication. Now, due to its two-way server requirement, a EVSE using SOAP needed a unique IP address to reach to the CMS. Now, this affects the scalability of charging station when multiple EVSEs are needed to be installed. Now, the implementation using SOAP is called as the OCPP-S. It is represented using this small form. Now, the JSON implementation is basically, the JSON is the JavaScript object notation, which is a lightweight data interchange format, and that is happening over a persistent WebSocket connection. It is basically the data representation format alternative to XML. Now it is lightweight and flexible format of data representation. It is human readable, it is compact, and the messages are sent in the form of strings. So thus this has fast, reliable and easy deployment, as it is of the lightweight and compact data representations. Now it relies on a persistent WebSocket based connection for two-way communication, where WebSocket is nothing but a communication protocol which actually allows real time two-way communication over a single always open connection. That means once the connection is being opened, the communication channel is still be there and the request and response message can be sent. Further, the security can be enhanced using security related protocols over the WebSockets. I mean, one can implement the protocols related to security over the WebSocket and can further enhance the security of this particular connection. Now in this case, since the communication is done with the CMS, multiple chargers can be located behind the single router without requiring unique IP addresses for each EVSE, which results in easy scalable implementation. Now since the JSON is fast, scalable, reliable and easier implementable, it is been adopted by most of the manufacturers. Primary because they uses the JSON based data representation, which is lightweight, which is easily implementable, which is understandable by the user easily, and plus the reliability can be ensured by introducing different protocols over the WebSocket communication. Now one can also use the HTTP based connection instead of WebSocket, and in case only one message has to be shared between the entities. Now if the JSON implementation is being used, it is called as the OCPP-J, and let us say if one uses 1.6 version of OCPP, then it is called as the OCPP 1.6J based implementation. If one uses 2.0.1 version of that, so then it will be OCPP 2.0.1, and it is been implemented using the JSON, so it is called as a OCPP 2.0.1J based OCPP implementation. Now this OCPP JSON implementation is actually been introduced from the OCPP 1.6 version and above, and in OCPP 2.1 it is been mandatory that the implementation has to be done using JSON implementation. Here the XML based SOAP implementation is actually the large size, the data becomes larger in size, that is when the speed also gets impacted. However, in case of JSON implementation, because it is lightweight, the fast communication can be obtained. Further, the SOAP implementation is quite a strict implementation, that means the messages have to be structured as per the different protocols. However, the JSON implementation is quite a less formal based implementation. The messages are quite human readable, it can be easily understandable by the user. Now if we see different version differences, what are those different versions which are there? So we start with OCP 1.6 because it is the widely accepted the OCPP protocol. It includes several features such as status notification, remote start and stop of charging sessions. So one can remotely control from the CMS itself the EVSE start and stop sessions. It offers firmware management, it offers data transfer capabilities over WebSocket connections using JSON implementation. It also supports SOAP as well. However, the 1.6 implementation, it has certain limitations, for example related to security features. For advanced security features are not been there. It does not support ISO 15118 protocol, and we know how important the ISO 15118 protocol whenever you have the CCS2 charging system there. And also it supports only the basic smart charging capabilities. It does not support the advanced ISO 15118 protocol. However, in 2.0.1 it has enhanced security features, it introduces advanced smart charging capabilities, it is compatible with ISO 15118 standard, can easily scale it up. Different EVS is compliant to that ISO 15118 standard can be implemented and do it. It can be used to implement complex communication architecture. So all those things can be done. Then it also supports the direct vehicle communication. So all those things are being introduced in OCPP 2.0.1. One can easily go through its documentation and understand those things. Now let us discuss some of the message format which are being used in OCPP-J implementation. Why we are discussing OCPP-J? Because it's a very compact, lightweight implementation. So that's when many people uses this OCPP-J implementation. So let us see how this OCPP-J implementation can take place. So again, it has the messages which are there. There are three kinds of messages or three types of messages which are there. One is a call message, which is a kind of, you can say it is a request kind of thing, a request message. And you have the call result, which is kind of respond to that call which is being requested. Then you have call error, which is generally is initiated from the server to client in case there is some error while doing the communication taking place. Now the messages between the central management system and EVSE is basically this set of, or you can say is a strings of calls and call result. That means, you know, several set of request and response messages we have between the CMS central management system and the EVSE. Now each message type which we discussed, three, call, call result, call error, has a specific message type number, because that is where server as well as the client, or you can say the CMS as well as the EVSE realizes what kind of request and what kind of response is being expected. So this is nothing but the message type number 2 is for call, 3 is for call result, 4 is for call error. By seeing this message type number, one can able to understand whether it is a call message or is it a response message or is it a error message. And this will actually help the CMS as well as EVSE to segregate between the respond and request messages. Now let us see one by one what are those call messages formats. So in the call message, it basically comprises of, first is message type ID. If you have understood what is message type ID for call, it is 2 and it is a data type is integer, and it is the message type number which is used to identify the type of message. So we have seen here in the previous slide, for call the message type number is 2. Then comes the message ID, so which is nothing but a string of 36 characters, and it is nothing but it is a unique identifier which is used to match the request and the result. So this is the unique identifier. Now this message ID it used to identify the request. The message ID for call message is different. So every message which is being shared between the CMS and EVSE is different. So that is why the message ID has to be different. For call message is different from all the previously used message IDs. Obviously it is over the same WebSocket communication. So every message ID must be having a unique number, and that must be different from the previously shared message ID. However, the message ID for call and the call error messages, which is kind of a response to that request, must be having the same ID as that of the call message ID. So every message has a message ID, and message ID for call is unique, different than previous messages. However, the response to that will have the same message ID, so that the entity which is receiving that response must understand that it is response to that particular call which is being initiated by the entity. So that is why the call result and call error message will have the same message ID as that of the call message ID. Since it is a response to that particular call, so the response to that particular call must have the same message ID, and it is nothing but a strings of a 36 character. And then it comprises of another field which is the action field. It is the name itself say action field, and this is nothing but string type field, and it is basically the name of the remote procedure or action which is supposed to happen. and this field will contain a case sensitive string. So, for example, if there is a boot notification request, if there is a boot notification request, that is the action which has to be done. So, it will be represented as boot notification. The request will not be there in the boot notification. This is one example. Similarly, if there is a start transaction request, so the action will be the start transaction. So, that will be the field description. So, in the call message, first is obviously message type ID, then comes the message ID. So, in the entire this thing you have message type ID which is an integer, you have message ID which is the string, after that you have the action field which is again a string, and then finally you have the payload field which is nothing but a JSON kind of data type. It is JSON object containing the arguments relevant to the action. So, payloads are the data part of the messages that carries specific information which is been exchanged between EVSC and CMS. It has particular fields against which the data are being sent inside the messages, which is being used to perform the required actions. Now, these payload fields can be required or optional fields which is given in the OCPP documents. And if there are no payload in that particular JSON, then a notation must be null or and empty object you can say define. So, if there is no payload, then you have to either define null or empty object, or indicated by this way you can implement. If there are no fields to that particular call message, for example, one simple message is the heartbeat request message. So, heartbeat request messages are being sent to keep the connections live. It does not have any field in the payloads because there are no action which one has to perform. So, the message field comprises of message type ID, message ID, action, payload. So, action defines the name of the particular procedure which has to be done. Payload defines the data content of the message which is being used to perform required action, or you can say actually data part of the message. Then comes the another message format which is the call result. Now, in call result, as we have discussed, just like in the case of call, we have a message ID which is an integer, and in case of call result which is nothing but the response kind of message, it has the message type ID nothing but 3. So, if you look here is nothing but a message type number which is 3. So, that is the call result message type ID. Now, again for every call message there is a message ID. So, for every response to that call will also have a message ID, and that message ID is same as that of the particular call which is been initiated by the required entity. Now, it is again a 36 string comprises of 36 characters, and this has the same ID which is there in the call request, so that the recipient which is receiving that particular call result will understand that this is the response to that particular call which they have initiated. So, it is easier for the recipient to match the request and result. So, that is why this particular message ID will be the part of the response message. And then again, just like in the case of call, here also we have the payload which comprises of the arguments relevant to that particular action which is been defined in the call request. Now comes another kind of message which is called as the call error message. Now, in the call error message again, it is the field is message type ID which is again an integer same as that of call and call result. Again the message type ID which is defined as the 4. If we see here, we have defined the message type is nothing but the 4. So, the moment the receiver receives that 4, they indicates that it is the call error message which has come, or error message which has come. Now, message ID is again the string of 36 characters, and if you look very carefully, it has the same message ID which is there in the call request. Now, for example, let us say if the charger demands some data from the CMS, then they will attach that ID towards that call. And if while sending the request, if they find there is some error, then the CMS will respond to that call with the call error message, and that is why they have the same message ID. Then in this call error message we have message type ID, that is the kind of message one has to send. Message ID has to be there. Then you have error code. Again it is a string, this has to be string from the error tables. Again this is given in the OCPP document, one can see what error code has to be sent whenever the error is been taken place. So that is when while doing the implementation one need to define that error code. Again it is a string type of field. Then you have a error description. Again it is what you can say, see this error code is a fixed error code which is given in the OCPP. So they will define what kind of error is it, just the name of that error, while the error description will define some description about the error. Most of the time if possible it has to be filled in, but if it is nothing is there, then one need to provide it as a empty string. Then comes the error details. Again it is the JSON object which describes the error details in a undefined way in a certain manner, and if no error details then it has to be kept empty object. So it is the error details one need to keep. Again what should be there, what kind of errors and what error codes, all those things will be defined in that OCPP document. So here we have seen three different messages: call message which is a kind of request message, we have call result, we have call error. So these messages which are sent has to be sent with a certain format, and that format we have discussed. Now one can have OCPP 1.6 compliant by implementing 1.6 version of OCPP. Similarly, one can have OCPP 2.0.1 compliant by implementing 2.0.1 version of OCPP. Now in OCPP 1.6 there are several messages, mostly there are 56 request and confirm messages, as we have indicated it is 28 cross 2 messages. So there are 28 requests, and corresponding to those 28 requests there are 28 confirm messages. So there are total of 56 messages. Some of them I have indicated as authorized, boot notification, cancel reservation, change availability, change configuration, clear cache, clear charging profile, data transfer, diagnostic status notification, firmware status notification, get configuration, get diagnostic, heartbeat, remote start transaction, remote stop transaction, meter values. Different messages are being incorporated in that OCPP 1.6 protocol. So one can implement various functionality using this set of messages, and if one says the system is OCPP 1.6 compliance, then they must use these sets of messages. Further addition to this, other messages can also be defined, but these are minimum set of messages which have to be implemented. So in this one can go through the OCPP 1.6 specification document, easily downloadable. It is an open access document, one can download and one can see those messages. Now each messages, as we mentioned, has message payloads which defines the data content in the message. So each OCPP J message will have its corresponding payloads, and these payloads are also being defined in the OCPP document. If one wants to implement OCPP 1.6 version, then OCPP 1.6 J document to be looked for. If one wants to implement OCPP 2.0.1 version, then corresponding document need to be looked for. So all these messages which I am mentioning, each message will have its own payload. The response will have one kind of payload, the request will have some other kind of payload. So for example, the boot notification request will have one kind of payload, and boot notification response will have another kind of payload. So each message will have its own payload, or you can say arguments which is been defined, and which you can say in simpler manner the data content of the messages. Now each message payload has some field which can be required or optional field. against which the data is being sent. So for example, the payload for remote start transaction request message are shown over here. It has the field which are connector ID, it is of integer type, and it is the optional field. It is basically the connector number on which the transaction is starting, and the connector ID has to be greater than 0. Now the second field in the payload of remote start transaction request message is ID tag, which is of ID token type, and it is the required field which has to be sent in the remote start transaction request message. So it is the identifier which is used by the EVSE to start the transaction. Then comes the charging profile, which uses charging profile type, and it is used by the EVSE or charge point for the requested transaction, and it is an optional field which is been defined over here. Similarly, if you see the heartbeat confirmation message, which has the field name current time, which has to be there with that particular message, and this contain the current time of the central management system. It is the required field for this payload of heartbeat confirmation message. Now heartbeat is there to ensure that the connection is live, and it has to be sent in between to ensure the connection is live. Similarly, here we are showing you the boot notification request message payloads. Now it is the message which is sent from the EVSE to CMS immediately after EVSE starts up, confirming its availability and providing initial details. Now the payload of this request message include the fields which are charge box serial number, charge point model, charge point serial number, charge point vendor, firmware version, ICCID, IMSI, meter serial number, and meter type. Now the different field type have been defined. Now here in this, some fields are optional, some fields are required. For example, charge point model is the required field, and it contains the value that identifies the model of the charge point, or you can say or EVSE, to which the central management system is communicating. Similarly, the charge point serial number is optional. The charge point vendor is the required field in this payload. Now this contains a value that identifies the vendor of the charge point, or you can say or EVSE. Similarly, there are some fields which are optional, some fields which are necessary to be put in the payload of boot notification request message. Similarly, on the other side, if you see, we are showing the payload of boot notification confirmation message. Now it has the field which is current time, interval, and status. Current time is of date time type, and it is a required field. This contains the central system's current time, or you can say CMS current time. It has the field interval, which is the nothing but the integer. It is also a required field. Now it tells the minimum wait time before sending the next notification request message. Then you have the status field, which is of type registration status, and again it is a required field, and it contains whether the charge point has been registered within the central management system or not, within the central system. So here the charge point is analogous to the EVSE, while the CSMS is analogous to CMS, or you can say charging station management system or central management system, or also sometimes called as the central system. So if you see in the payload, some of the fields are required, some are optional. So the developer must decide whether they want to keep that optional field or not during the time of implementation. Similarly, one can go through the OCPP-J specification document to find out payloads of other messages as well, and all the messages in the OCPP will have the defined payloads which is been documented in detail in OCPP specification document. And let's say if you are implementing 1.6 version of OCPP, you can go and see OCPP 1.6 J specification document. If you are implementing OCPP 2.0.1, you can go and see OCPP 2.0.1 specification document and can able to understand what are the payloads of the messages which has to be included inside the messages when it is being sent. So let us understand the different steps of development of OCPP implementation. In this, first the designer has to select the OCPP version. They have to understand the different aspect of that version, and they have to select the language which will be used to implement that particular OCPP. Now the language could be Python, Java, JavaScript. Now they can use the existing OCPP libraries. For example, if they are using the Python language, then Python libraries corresponding to OCPP can be imported or can be used. And after that, they have to implement the communication. For example, they have to implement the WebSocket communication. In this, EVSE opens the WebSocket connection to CMS, while CMS always listens for incoming WebSocket connections from the charge point or EVSE. And that is when one can easily scale the number of EVSE in a charging station. And then after that, one has to implement the OCPP messages to perform different functionalities. They have to structure the messages, like which message to go first, then which message will come, then what messages will be received. All those things can be defined. And after that, one has to design the architecture on the server side. For example, obviously on the server side, they have to implement the WebSocket server, which listens to the connections sent by the EVSEs, and then they have to also understand with what logic they will be implementing. For example, how the messages to be processed, what data to be stored, how to handle the communication, all those things will be defined. And then they have to also implement how the different functionalities will be managed. For example, how they manages the different states, sessions and transactions. And finally, once connections are being implemented, once the messages are being implemented, once the architecture on the server side has been implemented, like how they manages different functionalities, finally they have to do the testing with the either simulator or the real hardware. So this is how one can implement this. They can use the messages which is defined in the OCPP document, and they can develop the communication between the CMS and the EVSE. And this communication is primarily done using the WebSocket based communication because it opens the persistent or real time two-way communication. Further, one can also do it using the HTTP communication, but there one set of messages are being sent, the communication gets completed or gets ended, and again it has to be initiated once more. So in order to implement the faster communication between the CMS and the EVSE, they use the WebSocket based communication. So once the communication is been opened, the messages are being sent between the EVSE and the CMS, and the required functionality will be performed. So if we take some example, so for example, if we see the boot notification, so this is the message ID, and then these are the different field of boot notification messages. So first field is message type ID. Since it is the call message, so it is a 2, the message ID type is 2. Then you have the unique ID, message ID, which is nearly 36 characters, so it is a 36 character string. And then you have a action field which include the what kind of action you are gonna do. So it is a boot notification, it is a request, but we will not write request, we will just write boot notification. It is a case sensitive field one need to understand. Then comes the payload field. In the payload field, as we have understood, in the payload field what are required thing, charge point model and charge point vendor. So if you see the charging station, we will write model. So if you see charge point model, so we have defined model. That model you can define the any number to that, and you have to define the vendor, which is again a required thing. So the vendor is been defined, which is a vendor name, and they have been defined one vendor name. Then what is the reason? One can also include this the reason to that, another thing which is nothing but the power up case we can say. Then comes the response to that boot notification. Since it is a response, the message ID is 3. The unique ID, if you see the call ID, this is a call ID which I said. So, the message ID for call message and the response message is the same, and that is why the recipient will understand that the message is correspond to the boot notification request which they have sent. And in the payload, if we see payload, there are 3 current time, interval, status. So, they have sent the current time, what is the time, what is the interval, 10 interval. So, interval means whenever the registration status is accepted, this contains the heartbeat interval in second. So, 10 seconds of heartbeat interval. If the central system returns something other than accepted, the value will be the minimum wait time. So, in the 10 second the heartbeat has to be sent, and then comes the status, which is nothing but the accepted. Similarly, one can also see the heartbeat message. In the heartbeat request, the message ID, this is the call message. Since it is 2, we understood it is a call message. They define the unique ID, message ID, which is nothing but the 36 character string, and they have defined the action, which is the heartbeat. We do not have to write request, just the heartbeat. Payload, since there is no payload for heartbeat, so they define the payload to be an empty payload. It is the empty, nothing, no argument is been sent, just the heartbeat request is been sent. To respond to that request, the response is been sent. So, that is why the message type ID is 3. The unique message ID is the same what was there here, and if you see, the boot notification message ID and heartbeat message ID is different. So, both should be the independent of each other. Then they define the payload. If you see the call result message format, there is no action, only the response is there. So, there is no action, directly the payload. If you look the payload in the heartbeat confirm message, the payload field is nothing but current time of the central management system. So, they have defined the current time, which is this. So, this is how the messages are being sent, this is how the OCPP can be implemented in the central management system and in the EVSE, and that is when they both communicate with the standardized message formats and standardized intervals. So, this is how the communication between the EVSE and CMS will be taking place. Although, if you want to go more into detail of this OCPP implementation, you can easily read OCPP 1.6 or 2.0.1. Now, they have also come up with OCPP 2.1 detailed document. You can just open up those documents and you can keep on read those documents. With that, you will come to know a lot of information. This is an example we have shown over here using the understanding developed here. One can easily go through those documents and read through those documents and can able to understand how to implement those OCPP protocol in the CMS system as well as the EVSE. So, thank you very much for patiently listening to this lecture. We will meet you in the next lecture, and we will continue our discussion. Thank you.